could really take on your ideas. And I was really fascinated. For instance, just one little tiny inspiration you gave with this color system, and how that works. I mean, that easy, really that easy. Everybody could do that. It's really good. And thank you for sharing that, really. So, and now I have the pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, James Brainard. And let me just tell you something about it. It's an impressive CV he has, believe me. But I can just point out several points. So he has been just elected for the sixth time as mayor of Carmel. You believe it or not, the sixth time. And under his tenure, Carmel has experienced tremendous growth and prosperity. It is considered one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. The population has grown from 25,000 to almost 80,000 in the last 12 years. So you want to be there, believe me, I've seen pictures normally. Parkland, green space and trail have been increased from 40 acres to more than 800. The creation of a new downtown and the arts and design district have brought new life into forgotten areas of the city. All of these improvements have given the citizens of Carmel increased opportunities for recreational and cultural activities. Mayor Brainard had, for instance, just built a beautiful concert hall. This is really, and actually it was inspired, the architecture, by Palladio, an Italian. Carmel has been honored with many awards for its high quality of life and environment initiatives. Most recently, the city was awarded first place in the Climate Protection Awards from the US Conference of Mayors and is national runner-up of the Home Depot Award of Excellence and Community Trees. Mayor Brainard has implemented numerous environmental initiatives for the city of Carmel. He has encouraged the construction of roundabouts in place of traditional signaled intersections in Carmel, which reduces vehicle emissions. The city now has more than 84 roundabout intersections. Mayor Brainard has, for instance, signed executive orders mandating the use of hybrid vehicles for city operations when available. His achievements and commitments to public service include serving as a trustee and co-chair of President Obama's Energy Independence and Climate Protection Task Force for the US Conference of Mayors. So we are really and indeed honored to have you here tonight, Mayor, and please, I'm very much looking forward to your speech tonight. So afterwards, of course, there will be a Q&A session, and please feel free to ask your questions later on, but now please come up to me.
The PowerPoint apparently is for the lighting system. Is the microphone system working?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good.
No, it's not working.
I didn't think it was, man. Yeah. Hold and press.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah. And if we turn down the lights back here, it'd be great. Oh, is that Carmel? Oh, we're getting started. Let me thank the staff at the German-American Institute. They have been absolutely wonderful. Council General, thank you for coming. Appreciate your attendance here. And thank everybody from Stuttgart who's been so kind and hospitable since I arrived here yesterday morning. We'll go back. There we go. That's our Rathaus, or City Hall. My office is underneath that white flower right up at the top left. Let me just tell you a little bit about, well, we'll go ahead here. There's a famous magazine in the United States owned by CNN called Money Magazine. And every 2 years they conduct a contest. And they start with about 100 data points. And they get to the final 5 cities and they choose one they think is the best place to live in certain population categories. In 2012, my city, Carmel, Indiana, was chosen as the best place to live in the United States. So this is very helpful to me when I go other places to say to business leaders to locate a facility in my city, having this sort of magazine. You know, the people in New York actually pay attention to me now. They always did do that. There we are in the middle of the country. We're part of the Indianapolis metropolitan area. Indianapolis, of course, you know, city of Indiana, the Greek is the capital city. It is located in the geographic center, and the metropolitan area is about 2 million people. 1 million in the city itself, and about 1 million in the suburbs. We are the fastest growing and the largest suburb to Indianapolis. There we are in the middle of Indiana. So when I start to talk about Carmel, I always show these slides when I'm in other places. The first comment I said, this isn't Carmel. We don't have an ocean. We don't have any place to put sailboats. We don't have mountains. And this is San Diego, California. And it's always about 20, 25 degrees there. It never varies. And so I said, this is not Carmel. We don't have those natural advantages. And I show this picture. I said, this isn't Carmel either. No mountains. This is Aspen, Colorado. It's beautiful, but we don't have that natural environment either. Then that picture, that once more is not Carmel. On the other hand, this is our palette, or what I have to work with to build a city. Flat. It is green in the summer. But we have similar weather to Stuttgart. I sometimes refer to it as lousy weather. It's hot in the summer and cold in the winter, without a lot of snow, no mountains, no oceans. So we have to focus on the built environment. I go through this, and then I pop up this slide and say these folks had the same challenges we do, and they did just fine building a beautiful city. It's flat, there are no mountains, there are no oceans, and the weather's not all that great, but yet one of the most beautiful cities in the world was built. But it was done through architecture, through city planning, and good design. People will sometimes say to me, what's the overall goal as mayor? What are you trying to do? I'll say it's about creating the environment where people can thrive. And that means a lot of things. It means people from wherever, regardless of their economic status, regardless of what their parents did or how much money they had, what their educational level was, that people can thrive in our city, that all those opportunities are there. And that includes clean air, a high quality of life, a place that people will choose. And I go back to those earlier slides. If we want to attract good jobs to our region, our city, we have to be able to compete for the best and brightest employees. And that means we have to compete against San Diego with the palm trees and the perfect weather and the mountains and the ocean. That means we have to compete with places that have beautiful mountains and snow and ski hills, one of my favorite things. We have neither of those. We don't have those things. So we have to compete by making sure the quality of life through design and planning of our city is the best. So let's talk about before we get into the specifics of the environment, I'd like to talk a little bit. I studied history as an undergraduate, and I would like to put suburban development and city development into perspective, starting with the beginning of the 20th century. I guess I better move over here since we're live streaming and so I'm in the view of the camera. Think about before, well, the car was invented, what, late 1800s, early 1900s. Some people were able to afford cars. We got up before the start of the Great Depression in the United States. The stock market fell in October of 1929. We had about 25% of households, of families that owned a car or a truck. Many of them were farming families and they needed it for their work on their farms. But no more than that. Then the Depression came and many people couldn't afford to maintain those cars and trucks. And then the United States entered World War II in December of 1941, and oil and gas and rubber were rationed. And so people that had cars were able to use them. They couldn't buy the petrol or the gasoline to use them, and so they just stored them until the war was over. So at the end of the war, most people in the United States still walked most places. Our cities were still designed in a compact way that people could go from place to place and complete their daily activities. They could go to work, they could take their children to school, they could go to the market. All the things that people do in a normal day could be done either in the larger cities with public transportation, or in the smaller cities by walking or riding a bicycle. But there had been no building in the United States since 1929, so our cities were very crowded. Many times people, 2 or 3 generations, were living in very small flats or apartments. Antibiotics that prevented disease as a result of a lot of this overcrowding were not released to the public until after the war was over. They were used during the war, but only for the military. In our cities, what did I say? Our cities were still powered with coal furnaces in each house. The house, on the side of the house, would have a coal bin. The coal company would come into the lower part of the basement of the house, put coal in, and somebody in the house would then shovel it into the furnace every night. I'm old enough to remember, I grew up in a small town or village. We'd visit the city of Indianapolis. My father was a music teacher, and he'd take students there for various reasons. I remember one time, I was about 7 or 8, asking my mother why the sink is black after I wash my hands and face at the end of the day. It was because of the coal dust. And so our cities still had a lot of disease. They were overcrowded. They were dirty. And so the war was over, and the average factory worker in the United States, for instance, we were resupplying Europe and Asia. The average factory worker had a tremendous amount of money compared to any time before in our history. And there's also this theory in American intellectual history of elbow room and space and getting out of the crowded cities of Europe, this opportunity to have a yard or a garden. And so many people, you ever watched the American movie with Jimmy Stewart's So Wonderful Life? Christmas movie? It's a good movie if you haven't watched it. It's an old movie, but the theme of the movie is about people getting away from being renters, owning their own property, building a nice town, and it really picks up these themes that I'm talking about. There's one scene in the movie where the banker is helping, Jimmy Stewart's the good guy, is helping this family that came from overseas get a house in the suburbs, as opposed to the small apartment they were in. This was kind of the American dream. But when we totally changed the way our cities were built, within a 10-year period, we went from under 20% of the country owning a car to close to 100%. And when we did this, we threw out 10,000 years of how cities had been built and how they've been planned. We started to design for the car, not for people. And I think architecture got bad because people weren't walking around looking at architecture anymore. They were rather in their cars. We've gotten to the point today where the average American, according to a study from the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard in Massachusetts, says the average American spends 2 hours a day in their car. Not anymore by choice, but because of the way we've designed our cities. So a lot of what we can do when we try to reduce our carbon footprint, and I think people in the United States recognize that we have a very large, I think the largest carbon footprint on a per capita or per head basis of anyone, that we have to really start over how we design. So as I tell you the story of our city over the last 20 years, the point I want to make is that even though we were started as a suburban city, we tried to re-examine everything we did to reevaluate it and see if there was a better way of doing it. Because we recognized that the way our suburbs, which are new cities in the United States, had been built since about 1946, wasn't working very well. We were creating sprawl. There weren't enough financial resources to support the infrastructure because we were sprawled out so much. To give you one example of that, a road in the United States, to take an old farm to market road in the suburbs and turn it into a city street costs $10 million a mile. So if we have one level buildings along that mile, we need much more street than if we went up. And Stuttgart has the height and the scale and massing of the city, I think, is just perfect. We need more road. We need more firefighters to cover this area. We need more water pipe. We need more sewage pipes the more you sprawl out. And we have sprawled out so much in our suburban areas in the United States that many cities keep doing it until they get to the point where they can't afford it anymore. And so there's a fiscal side, a financial side to why we ought to re-examine how we're building our cities as well. So in the area of utilities, we also looked to Europe. We found a system in Denmark that was being used, and we became the first city to use it in the United States. Our Environmental Protection Agency classifies the leftover sewage, sewage product in the 3 categories, A, B, and C, and the biosolids. And so we wanted the Class A biosolids. It's basically what we do. We heat up the leftover product to Fahrenheit 900 degrees for a long period of time, but we use the methane flame that's already being produced by the sewage to do so we don't create any additional carbon. And we're able to use that leftover product without producing any additional carbon as a fertilizer on the fields. And it's not, it's a processed, clean sort of fertilizer at that point. And we were able to borrow, some people might say steal, but we borrowed that system from a city in Denmark that was very helpful to us in installing it. We're the first in the US. We also realized that there's a lot of household products that contribute to pollution and should not be in our sewer system. Paints that may have, old paints that may have lead in them, pesticides, cleaning products, medical sharps. So we created a spot where waste that we did not want in the landfill or could not otherwise be recycled easily could be taken, and household hazardous waste. As I mentioned before, we're using methane gas to power a sewer plant as well as produce the Class A biosolids. One of the things that we do is spend a lot of time with our street tree program that reduces heat islands. We spend substantial resources, over $1 million per year, some years close to $2 million a year of our budget just on street trees in our city. That includes care and maintenance, planting new trees, creating a canopy over the streets that prevents heat and helps the environment. And allows us to, make our roads and streets beautiful. Cities in general have so few resources to work with that we looked for things that we already do, streets, sewers, and said, how can we do them just a little bit differently so that we stand out? We looked at ways of reducing carbon. We started to, in our parking areas, install, usually in partnership with private sector companies, to start electric vehicle charging stations. So that battery cars, which are just coming on the market, I was talking with a gentleman from Daimler last night who was talking very optimistically about the number of cars that are going to be produced that are solely battery powered cars. We're also, it's not a requirement yet, but most of our new buildings, commercial buildings, install solar panels to provide part of the power to part of the energy for the building, for the heating and cooling and lighting. But we also have, Indiana is a state where there's a lot of coal, and it's a high sulfur coal, and most of our private electrical utilities still mainly use coal. We are concerned about the quality of the air in our city and our state, and there are efforts. This is a wind farm 120 kilometers from our city, but it's being used as an area where there are higher winds, and private companies are installing wind farms, and over time that'll help the air quality and the amount of carbon produced. One of the things I talked earlier about the average American driving or spending 2 hours a day in their car. A lot of that is because of city design. After World War II, as we started to build these suburbs, it was still an industrial society. Factories were still dirty, so we put all our houses by zoning would be required to be, say, over here. The factories would be over here. The offices might be here. The schools, the churches, the synagogues would be over here. And as a result, we created a system where people had to drive everywhere they needed to go. The average American can't walk in a suburb today, can't walk anywhere they need to go on a daily basis. And we created a system of sprawl. So we went back, it even has an acronym now, it's becoming more popular, what's called traditional neighborhood development. And it's really looking back at the way that Western culture and other cultures, not just Western culture, but Europe and other places have developed over centuries. 3 to 6 or 7 stories, stores on the bottom, housing and offices above, and that was unique for a suburb. And we were one of the first suburbs in the United States to say we wanted to do this. We went into our older areas, we raised the buildings that were single-use buildings, tore them down, bought the property, and it was such a new concept. We had to incentivize the developers to do it. They said, no, it won't work. Everybody wants to go to the shopping mall on the edge of town and drive to it. And so we had to incentivize it, but we used what we call public-private partnerships and negotiated buildings, and I'll show you some of those pictures later. We also took a rail track that had been removed, and it ran right through the middle of our city and turned it into a cycle or a bicycle and pedestrian path, and there you see it in the lower picture. And then to it, we've added 170 miles of cycle or bike trails in our city. That's the older area, what was a little village area when it was 1,000 people. It was about 4 blocks, and we knew it wasn't. Our eventual population is going to be well over 150,000 given our land mass. And so what do we do with this older little tiny village downtown that we had? So we knew it wasn't large enough to be a downtown for our eventual population, but we wanted to make sure certain it was nice and improved. And so we turned it into an arts and design district. We put up 4 of these archways so that when visitors came, they actually knew when they had gotten there. They knew where it was. We did a series of public-private partnerships. In fact, all those buildings you see are actually new buildings. We allowed the taxes for the new buildings 80% of the new property taxes to be used to put underground parking in. Our land cost is still so inexpensive, and our state laws really don't speak to it, that it would be financially infeasible for developers to put the parking underground or in structures in an area like this. So we said it's public parking, we'll let you use a portion of your taxes to do that, and then they took that revenue stream and borrowed against it for 20 or 25 years. So all those buildings have underground parking. So we're still accommodating the fact that most people are still going to have an automobile, but yet encouraging walking, and we want people to come to that area, get their cars in the ground and get out and walk. Or if people who choose to live in that area don't really need to drive as much. There's some more pictures of the area. There's a before and after picture. One of the first buildings we incentivized. You can see houses above, restaurants and stores below. There's a building on the left, the first one we did, and another building on the right. And the building on the right has a 2-level underground parking. Underneath it has a piazza or plaza in the middle. And you can see the streets very narrow. We've actually widened the sidewalk there on the right. I'll show you some more pictures of that. Again, encouraging people to walk as opposed to drive places. There's a before and after as well. Again, a 1-story building replaced by a 3-level building. You can see the street trees in that picture too, even though they're very young, they'll grow. Same building. We've also put a lot of public sculpture in to make sure that people that walk in this area, it's an interesting walk. It's a way to support our artists and to make being a pedestrian more fun. It's actually a way to paint bronze that an artist figured out. People have a lot of fun. We have about 20 of this one artist statues, and people dress them for winter, put scarves on them. There's a big football game, they show up with different jerseys on. So I like it because people are having fun with the art. The picture on the left, yes, look at that area. And that's what I call a bump out. The same thing on this side. Those used to be parking spaces. We actually took those areas away. They're both in front of restaurants. And we got rid of a couple parking spaces, but then the restaurant owners can move tables out into that area. And we actually narrow the street, widen the sidewalk. And we call that putting the street on a diet. There's more pictures. We actually see this is a bike rack here in one parking space, and that's the shape of a car in metal. This actually came from London, but it shows that you can put about 12 bicycles in the space of one car. And of course, we think the community events that bring people together, much like your beautiful Christiane Market is here, is important. So we have concerts, movies out in the open almost every night during the week in the summer. There's pictures of various sculptures around. This is just about a 4 or 5 block area, but we're really focused on building an area that work for pedestrians, almost as a demonstration so we can continue to do it in other places. There's another before picture. You see the parking lot in front of the building. Not very pretty either. We replaced it. The city bought the land, allowed underground parking to be built using the 80% of the revenue stream of the taxes, and then replaced it with this design center. It has 85 different stores in it, everything that one might need if you design or build a new house or an office. Then we went 4 blocks to the south, and the city bought about 100 acres and said, we want a traditional downtown, and we're going to master plan it. So we bought this land. We worked for 2 years at least on a master plan, and I think the picture in the top left, this one, is about the 110th rendition of how we thought it would look in the end, and that's just part of it. And then the picture at the bottom was from about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It shows, you can see the similarities. It's not finished yet. We've built about 65 buildings in our new downtown. I have about 11, I have exactly 11 to go. But it's been a 20-year process in a city that really didn't have a downtown, a walkable, pedestrian-friendly downtown. Now we do. And what's happened as a result, we have other centers that are connected to it now. Developers on their own have gone 4 or 5 blocks away and created another little downtown area. And on this side, the same thing has happened, and there's now connections being made. And within about 5 years, we're going to have a 30 by 40 block area that's all walkable and pedestrian friendly. Small streets where people really won't be driving much, but mainly walking and cycling. There's a before picture. That was a grocery store that had left and moved across to another, we call those big box stores in the United States, and left us with that mess. And so that's part of the area we built, and then there's part of our city center today. And that was actually the highest tower, so it's about 8 levels. We don't want to really go higher than that. We also had did a contest, a sculpture contest, and this is a memorial for our military in the middle of our new downtown. With that, we have no water, so we built a reflecting pool behind it, and then behind that, those are apartments or flats that you see. And there's more pictures, the cycle track on the left and the top left picture of the new city center. We went out and found private sector developers that wanted to build their master plan. Initially, that was very hard. They said, this type of development won't work in a suburb in the United States. Today, we have a line of developers that want to work with us because they've seen that it does. We paid a lot of attention. We returned to Europe a lot and looked at traditional massing, the piazzas and the plazas or platz in German, and there's an example of a small square. And then downtown there, you see at the top left, that is actually a platform with parking underneath it, a series of streets. That's the square within an apartment building, the bottom right picture. You can see we also moved the buildings up to the street, put the cars underneath or at least behind the buildings, moved the houses up to the street, which is a very unusual thing when we started to do it in a U.S. suburb. Everybody's used to a big garden or lawn. So even though it may seem very normal here, it was very unique and different in the States. There's office buildings, and you can see where we, again, allowed the owner of the buildings to put this underground parking in. You can see how we almost hit it to make so we don't have a big parking lot out in front. Think about the financial from the city standpoint, though. We have a piece of land that's going to be developed. And we have to say we have a 20,000 square foot building on 2 levels that's going to be built. Let's pretend that we get $1 of property tax per square foot. So we have $20,000, correct? And it would be, and you have a big parking lot to support all the people that are going to be working in that building. On the other hand, that's exactly what happened in this case. We said to that developer, would you build 5 20,000 square foot buildings? In other words, 100,000 square feet, 5 times the amount. And he said, of course I would, but I had no place to put the cars. And he said, we'll let you use your taxes to build an underground garage until that's paid off, but it has to be public. Everybody has to be allowed to use it. And he said, of course I'll do it. So then the city, from a revenue standpoint, we're getting, what, 5 times the property taxes. Well, most of that's going to the garage for now, but the 20% that's not is what we would have gotten had only one building been built. And secondly, we're getting 5 times the income taxes from the people that live there, and 5 times the sales taxes when they go out and buy things in the area. So financially, it takes less land, it's more environmentally friendly, it discourages driving because it's close to homes, and we're not sprawling out, creating this sprawling suburb that so many places have built. We also needed an anchor, as Christiane mentioned, for the area, and we looked throughout the region. We built every sports stadium or stadium one can imagine, so we we did not have a true concert hall in the Indianapolis metropolitan area. We had good theaters, good opera theaters, but not a concert hall. And so we looked, it's a traditional area, so we looked to beautiful buildings to inspire our design, hired a nationally known architect from Washington, D.C., and he showed us the Villa Rotunda built outside of Venice in Vicenza, Italy, about 500 years ago by the architect Palladio. And, one of the famous 4 books of architecture that's still used in some architectural students here today. Have you read those books? Yeah, somebody's nodding, good. And so that was the inspiration for our design, and then you see the inside as well. So we bring some of the world's best artists. The Berlin Symphony was there a year ago. Munich Symphony has played there. It's only been open 5 years. William Ma was there 3 weeks ago. Isaac Perlman was there about 8 weeks ago. And we also have jazz and pop series. We have a small museum in the building of what's called the Great American Songbook era memorabilia, which is the songs America knew, or that the rest of the world knew America by between 1820 and 1960, Gershwins and so on, Cole Porter. We have a market. We think that local opportunities to buy local and organic food is important. Every Saturday we have a market on the green in front of our concert hall, and thousands of people come to that market. There's pictures of the new downtown area. You can see at the bottom picture, I think this is important, how small that pedestrian crosswalk is. That's actually a city street, but that wouldn't encourage people to drive through there. You can see that we, by design, have encouraged it to be a walkable area, not a driving area. That's the new parking structure that's under construction now. Even though it costs a bit more money, we wrapped it with retail on the bottom so that as people walk past that building, it doesn't become boring. It's an interesting walk. Actually a gasoline station or a petrol station. You can see it was an old restaurant at the top, and then it needed to be rezoned, and so we were able to get the company to do what we always wanted, and that was put the pumps behind the building, not in front of the building. Again, just so it looked better. And it makes that street look nicer and creates that streetscape that we want. You can see in the lower left, that's the front of the building. Again, that was an old service station or gasoline station, and a mechanic wanted to have a mechanic shop there. He wanted to add on to that old station that had been abandoned. We suggested, we know a computer and IT firm that's looking for second level space. Would you build it and lease it to him? And we hope you do that and work with you. Would you face the base to the back and bring the building up to the street so you don't have a big parking lot in front of it? And he did. And so the bottom right is the view from the street. You see the street trees and the sidewalk. We think it's important. We've tried to build most of our major streets as boulevards with grass and trees down the middle. And of course, sometimes people say, how do we turn left? Well, we've built more roundabouts than any other city in the United States as well. So the answer is go to the next roundabout and make a U-turn. We'll talk more about the environment. I want to talk about the environmental aspects of roundabouts as well, but it's a way to get that tree coverage. You also see how the cycle path is on both sides of the road. We've done that for 175 miles in our city, so that people can take a bicycle safely and not have to ride in the same space with the cars. Again, there you can see the effects of our street tree program. Single, one lane in each direction. One of the things that and I apologize to any civil engineers in the room, we found that the standard engineering answer to congestion in our city when I first became mayor was let's widen the road. Let's have more lanes of traffic. And we started to question that. I started to question it. And thought, all we're doing is really building a bigger parking lot to get more cars through the green cycle of the light. And then we started to do some research, and we realized that roundabouts could move 4 to 5 times the number of cars through an intersection in the same amount of time. That 4 to 5 times more could move through the roundabout than they could through a stoplight in the same hour. And so we started to replace our stoplights, and there's other reasons as well. with roundabouts. But that allows us not to widen the roads, and we can usually have one lane, maybe 2 lanes in each direction, but we haven't had to widen our roads so the whole city appears to be pavement. We also believe that sign pollution, that's the same street. That's a major street going into Indianapolis at the top. And then the cameraman swiveled. It's a different day, of course. One's sunny and one's cloudy. But that's on the same road looking north into Carmel without the sign pollution. So we don't allow businesses to have signage that's large and obtrusive and, in my opinion, ugly. You know, one restaurant wants to sign 100 meters or 100 feet tall, and the next one wants to be 125 feet tall, and the next one 140 feet tall, and pretty soon there's all these big signs. It's ugly, and it doesn't add to the aesthetics of the community. Again, you can see the cycle track here and how we preserve some of the old trees, and in the middle of the street there's pavement on the other side of those trees in the middle, and we've landscaped the middle with spring flowers. We talk a minute about roundabouts. Safety. We reduce injury accidents by 80% with roundabouts. Anybody here ever run through a yellow light? Council General? You've never done that, have you? No,
all the time.
Don't answer.
I thought yellow meant to go faster.
Yeah. So we know that 1 to 4 cars out of 1 million through an intersection will crash. That is the human error rate. It's the same in Africa and Australia and Europe and Asia and the Americas. It's the same. So the question is, what type of accident do you get? And so we found that when everyone's going slow through the roundabout, there's more reaction time. It's better for elderly drivers. It's better for younger drivers. It's better for poor drivers like me. But it's just better. And there's fewer accidents. And when there are accidents, it's a very minor accident because of the slow speeds. We also, a stoplight, a signalized intersection in the United States, costs about $150,000 in our part of the country. In an area that's close to cyclones or hurricanes, it's about double that, $300,000. And the euro and the dollar is about even these days. I think the euro is about 6% more. The environment. Remember that law from physics? Anybody here is a physics major? You're not in your head. It's the law of momentum. And it takes more energy to go, for instance, from 0 to 15 than it does from 15 to 30. Because of the momentum of that big heavy vehicle. And so our city engineer has estimated, because people don't stop most of the time at the roundabouts, they only slow down, and they're not idling at a stoplight, that we're saving about 25,000 gallons of fuel per roundabout per year based on our traffic times. Times 94 roundabouts in our city. We'll open number 100, cut the ribbon on number 100 next summer. 94 roundabouts, that's a lot of fuel that's being saved. It's a lot of carbon not being discharged into the air. Design, we think they're much prettier, nicer than a stop sign. You know, if I have a bedroom window that looks out on an intersection, or I want to see flowers and a nice urn or a fountain, or I want to see red, yellow, and green lights over and over and over. And as I said before, of course, public education is important, but the reduction of the pavement width, the last point on that slide, now that's a 4-lane roundabout because that's very early in the morning that picture was taken. It was a very, very busy intersection. That could have easily been a 6 or 8-lane road had it been a stoplight, given the traffic volumes that we have. We're able to, because we focus on the intersections, we don't have to make the streets as wide. We don't have to have as many lanes. Of course, the media has had all sorts. I never thought I was quite that short or that fat, but look how they made it so I barely come over the desk. The local media, now, that says NCAA upside down. That stands for the National College Athletic Association. And basketball is a big sport in Indiana. And that was the day the brackets for the tournament come out. And you can see how much fun they had drawing me with that. I always put this slide in to show that yes, trucks can handle roundabouts. We we put a bit of concrete. If you notice, the first 6 to 8 feet in is concrete. That way, if somebody misses, they don't destroy the grass immediately. Somebody tries to go too fast. And oh, there's another one. That was our Halloween holiday, where people, what Halloween is. I'm being scared because of a 4-way stop. Hey, this artist had a lot of fun with me on this. There was one a week for about a year. There's the center of our roundabouts, how we landscape them. And we think it helps the city. Not only creates green islands, reduces heat, but it's beautiful as well. Roundabouts work better in a series. If you go from a traffic light to a roundabout, all the cars arrive like an ocean wave all at one time in the roundabout, and it just slows down a bit. Oh, this is the last one. This is a good one too. What is that? Newly discovered molecular structure, decorative tile pattern for your bathroom, and a street map of Carmel. There were 52 of those. I think he did it for an entire year. This is a solution that we took. We had these, again, this is a picture taken from the helicopter at 4 o'clock in the morning in the summer, so there isn't much traffic. The sun has just come up, but it's a very, very busy street. There's 6 intersections with stoplights like this, and this is the main street in the city of Indianapolis. It carries a huge amount of traffic. And the delay on the smaller cross streets was often 4 or 5 minutes, with cars sitting there idling and polluting for gasoline. And so we separated the intersection grade, but we used a roundabout interchange. We hired a British firm to help us design this, since there hadn't been very many of those done in the United States. I don't think anybody did what we call this dog bone shape. There have been circles in the States, but nothing quite that shape. And we use less room too, because if you put a stoplight at Yishing, you have to start taking the stoplight, you create a diamond shape. Then, because of the key or the line between the two, the stoplight here and the stoplight over here, as you get off on the ramps, has to be farther and farther apart as the traffic increases. And so we would have had to take almost 50 houses had we done a typical stoplight interchange. And doing it this way, we only had to buy a couple, I think 3. Roundabouts we think are better for pedestrians as well, because they're safer. These are what I was talking about earlier. This is not Carmel, but those are big box stores. Do you have those here? Do you? Some? Not really. That's a good thing that you don't. We have a lot of major companies that do that. And you can see that you can't walk there. You can only drive there. If you could walk there, would you want to? Would it be a nice walk? Can you imagine a romantic walk with your spouse past a 10-lane highway and a parking lot? It's probably not where you want to go. And so we don't allow those in Carmel, unlike most suburban cities. We did this. Now this company is a sporting goods store across the United States, and they generally build in places like that. But we said no, it has to be 2 levels, and it has to have a little park out in front of it. And you see how we did that. The fact that it's a big box store is hidden. And again, through city design, we can focus on pedestrian access and cut down on driving. This is one of my favorite slides when it comes to the culture of why nobody walks. Now think about this for a minute. I think most of you got it right away, but think about it. These people are paying to go use a treadmill in this business, but yet they have chosen to take the escalator. They're, I guess, saving their energy for the treadmill. But this has become a culture in the United States. Everybody drives everywhere. You don't walk anywhere. We're trying to change that. It's better in a whole host of reasons. This is our trail that used to be a rail line many, many years ago. It was built during our Civil War in the 1800s, and the tracks were removed, I think, in the late 1960s. But we repurchased the property and turned it into a bike trail, and it shows that people do yearn for pedestrianism. We have laser counters in this trail. On a nice day, we'll have 14,000 to 15,000 people on it. We also do a bike share, as I think you're doing here as well. We just started the bike share this year and have stations, and we've set it up so that private companies can purchase the bikes and set up their own station in their offices, or a group of apartment building can also do it. We have the trikes for elderly people or perhaps disabled children, autistic children that may not be able to balance. Everybody knows what a bike share is. It's where you pay a small amount, or the bikes are free for the first half hour. So the market people just hook them back into the next station, take out a different one every 25 minutes. There's our city map with all the bike routes. Again, this is a weekly concert in front of the Roundhouse or City Hall. Again, we think bringing the community together and community events is important. This is not Carmel, but this is, again, I'd like to meet the civil engineer that did this. No one's going to want to walk down that sidewalk. We have to focus more in our design and building, and that should be allowed by whatever government allowed that to happen. What if you're in a wheelchair? You couldn't do it. You couldn't navigate it. This is not Carmel either. And this is typical of the way a lot of our suburbs look in the United States. You can see the focus on the garage. You see no place really to sit in front of the houses and talk to the neighbors. There is a sidewalk there in front, although, or pavement, as the British say, but many of the additions don't. In fact, if you had a couple beers, would you even find the right house? They all look the same. And so we're trying very hard to say, this isn't the way we want to design it. We want our city to be better than this. And so here's a similar neighborhood in Carmel. Again, somewhat different for the U.S., very narrow lots, which make it more walkable. You don't have to walk as far to get, but the houses are varied. See the emphasis on the front porches, which is traditional in the States for people to sit on those front porches, talk to people on the sidewalk, talk to their neighbors. It's much more social. And you notice the garages. They're not there, are they? They're in the back. Some people are going to have cars, we recognize that, but we're de-emphasizing the car to focus on pedestrians. So these have been our guiding principles as we design this new city. What we call mixed-use zoning. In other words, not segregating the different uses, all the stores over here, and the schools here, and the houses over here, and the factories on the other side of town, but mix it up so that there's less emphasis on the zoning, there's mixed-use development. We do pay attention to the form and architecture, but what you want to do is we want the buildings to be mixed. We've tried to build our city based on pedestrians, designed for people, not cars. We believe in a hierarchy of buildings. Public architecture ought to inspire people and make them proud of their city. We ought to use local materials, and the buildings need to be in harmony with the surroundings. They need to be on a human scale. There's some interesting research that's been done by a medical doctor at the University of California, Los Angeles, Richard Jackson. Just completed the book, and I served on a board with him. We've known for a long time that sprawl is not only bad for physical health because people don't walk, they drive everywhere, but it's also bad for mental health because of the lack of connection. We're social animals. And the more interesting research has been, this is Stuttgart again has done it properly, I think, is that if you go above about 7 or 8 stories, you suddenly learn that the same mental health impacts with sprawl are impacting people living on the tops of the buildings. And he believes it's because of the lack of connection with the street life. And has some very good statistical evidence to show that this is a consistent pattern throughout the world. He's looked at various cultures from Asia, Africa, Americas, Europe. So we think that the way Europe did it, prior to structural steel being invented in the late 1800s, is probably the right way to do it. Again, learning from thousands of years of city design experience. Keep things on a human scale. Enclosures or green spaces, our plats, our piazzas, our squares need to be small, surrounded by buildings so that people feel safe in them. There's a great book by Henry and Susan Lennard, L-E-N-N-A-R-D, called The Genius of the European Public Square, where they they were a married couple. He's deceased now, but she was a British architect. He was a Viennese psychologists. And so they worked together to look at the design of European squares, traditional piazzas and plazas and flats, and how people interacted with them, different generations interacted with them, how people celebrated these spaces, and which ones worked and which ones didn't. But we learned that the ones that are surrounded by buildings and fairly small generally are the ones that people will use the most. Aesthetics, pay a lot of attention to architecture and detail. We don't have, again, those natural amenities that those other places that I showed you at the beginning do. So we had to focus on the built environment. Get the densities right, that's what I'm talking about. You know, not too sprawling, not too tall. It's just learned from thousands of years of human history about how to design cities. Have you ever walked into the British Museum and seen the Rosetta Stone? Does everybody know what the Rosetta Stone is? Not the foreign language tapes you see in the airports, but the real Rosetta Stone. One of the first things that was translated after the Rosetta Stone was found and the hieroglyphics deciphered was that some tablets they found somewhere that use the hieroglyphics. It was basically a city planning manual saying how wide the streets are in relationship to the height of the buildings. So this is nothing new, what we're talking about. These are things that have been learned over centuries. But when the car came along, I think we threw out all thousands of years. So what we're trying to do is build a city where where we can save carbon, where we can make the environment better as a result of better city design. Cities can have a tremendous, have a lot of say over how the cities are built. And so as we build our new suburban cities, there's a very much a change going on in the United States about making them walkable, about making them more environmentally friendly, better building materials. So that's what we've tried to do in the city of Carmel. But let me open it up now to some questions. I haven't talked about US politics and COPs 21 going on in Paris here. I'm sure there's some questions about that. Yes, sir.
You had in your redevelopment area in downtown, you had, I'm sorry, in the redevelopment area, is it working?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Redevelopment area to downtown, you made sure that there was apartments over the retail centers.
Or offices.
Or either apartments or offices. Okay, can you tell me what the cost of living down there would be to somebody, let's say, a 1,500 to 2,000 square foot? People in Europe don't understand square feet, but you do, I'm sure. Let's say 100 square meters.
Yeah, about 120 square meters.
120 square meters would cost somebody to live down there.
700 euros a month.
Okay, very good.
For a 2 or 3 bedroom, might go up to 1,000 euros.
Okay.
Yes, man.
Yes, you shortly mentioned private-public partnerships. Would you be willing to elaborate a little bit what was it like to work with the private sector and how much of a role did they play in all this transformation of the city? Because obviously there must have been a lot of investment involved.
Well, once we had that city center plan done, I started to meet with developers. And the first 120 or so I met with said this will never work in the suburb. Finally, we found some local developers who said, we'll try it with you. And we would negotiate each building separately through a commission that's appointed, a 5-member commission that's appointed by elected officials, 2 from the city council and 3 from the mayor. And so these appointed officials then would negotiate in public meetings. They would have to vote, they could negotiate in private, but have to vote in public meetings. The openness, the transparency is very important when you do these transactions. And we would work with them for usually months. Okay, if you'll do this, will you do that? And it's a series of negotiations. And so we said, we want apartments or housing above the stores. We want the cars underground. We want the materials to be this. We want beautiful buildings. We don't like that architect's sketch. Did you get into the architect? That sort of thing. And we were very particular if we're going to allow them to use their taxes. We can ask for a lot. And So that's the nature of that public-private partnership. Does that answer your question? And they would come here and say, you know, land is inexpensive. We can't afford to put this parking underground. Or we can't afford to do this or that. And they show us their books and numbers. And we have to be convinced of that. And it needs to be a public discussion so that the public understands that there's no corruption involved or bribery. And having the transparency of why we're doing what we're doing was very important when you do those public-private partnerships. Any other questions? Yes.
Oh, you can.
Thank you. So why do you think that there's not more cities in the US picking up your development model?
Well, we had visits from almost 30, representatives of 30 some cities visit us last year. Michael, we've had a lot of media attention in the United States as well as overseas, and I think it is a trend. There's a group called the Congress for New Urbanism, in other words, new cities that focus on traditional neighborhood development. There's been books written by architects and city planners. One of the best ones, if students are interested, is Suburbanation is the title. The subtitle is The Rise of Sprawl and the Decline of the American Dream. And it's an easy book to read, a couple hours, but it's very, very, really expresses what I'm trying to talk about tonight, about how to create and build a city that, by the way it's built, pollutes less and is a quality place to live. I think that the cities around us, the other suburbs around us, are all trying to do what we've done over the last few years. So I think this is a trend in the United States. Yes?
What about public traffic in Carmel? Public traffic.
Public transportation.
We're part of the Indianapolis system. And we've been working with the city of Indianapolis, which is $1 million to our 100,000. And it's very much sprawl. Indianapolis has a very poor bus system. We have suggested that we need to add half a penny sales tax and have a system of bus rapid transit, better bus system, better connections, some train lines. And that question is going to go to the voters for a vote up or down next November, 11 months from now. And we're hopeful that the voters will say, yes, we need to invest less in roads and more in public transit. And that's something we really need to do. We're almost at the point within Carmel, too, intra-city, where we're looking at some buses just in our downtown area to circulate. We're probably within a year or two we'll be embarking on that. Any other questions? Yes.
Did you have these ideas before you were voted the first time, or how did people react to your plans, and also the industry, and were they involved at any time? Or
How did people react to our plans? I've been reelected 6 times, so I think that's the answer. I think people like it.
Yeah, that's why I meant, did you have these ideas before you were elected too? Or
Before I was elected, no, I was a history major and then a lawyer, and I knew nothing about city design. But when one thing they taught us in my university was how to use a library. And so after I was elected, I thought, I've got to go learn about sewer systems and roads and all these engineering type things that I didn't know anything about. And so I went, this was before the internet really was on the internet, at least in the mid-90s. And so I called several of the university city planning professors in the area and said, send me your syllabus for this class and that class, and the books that you're requiring students to read, and tried to read most of them. And that was helpful. And I think coming from perhaps a different background, being able to have set ideas that was helpful too. We challenged, my staff and I tried to get them to challenge everything that had been done in the past. Why do we do it this way? Does it make sense to do it this way? Is it good for the environment? Does it make fiscal sense? And so we came to the conclusion many, many times that the way things had been done for 50 or 60 years were not working. We knew they weren't working, but we're going to try it differently. And fortunately, I come from a place about 70% of our adults in the city of Carmel hold a university degree, and about 36% hold a graduate degree of some sort. So I think there's a culture in our city of let's look at the facts, let's, as a result of that training, let's not jump to a conclusion that something new will not work well. And as a result of that, they're in the higher income brackets as well, much like Stuttgart, a very wealthy place. And as people travel, and so they see Europe, they see how things have been done in other places. We borrowed a lot from Europe. We've looked at the cities throughout Europe, and so what can we learn from this? And Europe has much less. It's a modern continent, of course, but yet the carbon used per person is much less. And we can learn from that and hopefully make progress in the States too. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, regarding the climate change, what did your administration took measures for, regarding climate change? Did you felt any public pressure, or was it easy for you to implement the changes regarding the climate?
Yes, let me talk politics for a minute too, because I think that's important. I'm a Republican, and much of the middle part of the country in the South is dominated by the Republican Party, the more conservative party. There's really two parts to that party: the ones that are concerned about social issues and the ones that are concerned about economic issues. But in terms of the environment, until recently, the Republican Party had always been in the forefront. It was a Republican president, Teddy Roosevelt, over 100 years ago, set aside millions of acres of land for our public national park system. And it was President Nixon in the late 1960s and early 70s. Remember, he got into a bit of legal trouble and had to resign. But he was very good on the environment. We did not have a federal agency until he was president that set national standards. And he signed the bill that created our Environmental Protection Agency, which is a national, it's one of the cabinets, one of the departments of our national government. In addition, he signed the Migratory Bird Act, among others, protected the American bald eagle and other migratory birds. The Endangered Species Act, which protected animals that were about to become extinct. The Clean Drinking Water Act, which set national standards for the quality of drinking water in the United States. He dealt with standards for the entire wetland regulations that we have to protect natural areas was done during his administration. The entire framework of our national environmental policy was done. He was a Republican. He had cooperation of Democrats at that point in time. They worked together, but he was the Republican president that signed the legislation. The differences at that point were over, is he going to create jobs or hurt jobs, or these things that are in the national interest, but it was a good, solid debate. President Reagan, who was a Republican, became concerned about the ozone hole and was a proponent in the mid-1980s of the United States entering into the Montreal Protocols, or Compact. It's called the Montreal Compact, which is a similar contract, that reduced the ozone emitting chemicals. It was an agreement of many nations to do that. And so there's been this history of Republicans doing things for the environment. Most recently, we've had division. I think it's politics and elections coming up, and it's a way to grab headlines. But I have yet to meet anybody in my country that wants to drink dirty water or breathe dirty air. This is generally a nonpartisan issue when it comes to the average voter. Some are concerned about how money is spent and whether it's really effective. Some question the science of global warming. I'm not a scientist, so I believe 99% of the real scientists. our federal government, as you may know, did not, you know what the Kyoto protocols are? These are I think 1997, a climate treaty or discussion in Kyoto, Japan, and our Senate did not ratify, we did not join as a country. But I head up a committee, the Conference of Mayors, which is a group of mayors from all over the United States. I'm the Republican co-chair, and there's a Democratic co-chair. In this case, it was the mayor of Seattle, Washington. And we worked together over about a 4-year period to get over 99% of the cities in the United States to sign the equivalent of the Kyoto protocols. And remember that 85% of our population lives in a city in the United States. And so this represented the vast majority of people. And many of these mayors are Republicans, but they recognize the need that the Kyoto protocols, which were goals to improve the environment, were necessary and a good thing. So my argument has been to other Republicans that, number one, this has traditionally been a Republican issue, and we should work with the other side. It should be a nonpartisan issue that is devoid of politics. And secondly, that there are many economic opportunities that come with this problem. I'm an optimist. I always look for the good side of things, and I think there are a tremendous number of products out there. Green building products, new technology for almost everything we use in our daily lives is more environmentally friendly. And there's great economic opportunities. I was in India recently and talking to some of the mayors there about this, and I think they understood that there's economic, hopefully, I think they did, that there's economic development opportunities in building products that the world is demanding that are more eco-friendly. So I don't see, in my city, I haven't had much resistance. There's, a group of people that will never vote for me as mayor, but fortunately they're in the minority so far. But the vast majority of people are concerned about the environment. They're concerned about leaving a clean earth for our children and our grandchildren. And I really think the vast majority of Americans want to change. It's going to take strong political leadership. Change is hard in any society. And economic interest, people are scared that if we spend money on this, it will hurt our economy. Or if we raise the cost of electricity, it will hurt our industry. But I'm convinced that there are reasonable solutions. And every time there might be an economic hurt or it would hurt us economically, there's a corresponding way to improve our economy by improving the environment and reducing our carbon footprint. Comes to air quality, for instance, it's always frustrating to me that electric companies, the people that sell electricity and want to provide cheap electricity by using coal, say, well, cleaner electricity would cost so much more, but they don't include the healthcare costs for lung disease. They don't include many of the indirect costs that need to be looked at. So, I think most Americans want to make a difference regardless of their party affiliation. And, yes, sir.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Brainard, for this, I think, quite interesting input. What I'm quite puzzled with, and also quite interesting to hear your maybe also different gray shades. On the one hand, it looks like you have really intervened in very specific private projects. So this gasoline station, you went there and said, can we not organize a bit different? Can we not make it nicer? At least from what I know from US politics, and also at least here also city planning, at least also Germany, it seems that more and more is privatized. Actually, what you did seems to be the opposite, to intervene much more through the governmental policies, even on private-owned land, existing land. However, that's somehow echoed by party colleagues, because in some cases you would probably hear in this city, even more in other cities, I know we don't like this kind of strong state approach. And the second question I can ask, or let's allow what would be a recommendation if now this Kyoto or post-Kyoto protocol is passed and the US has still the challenge whether the next federal level would modify this kind of agreement or input that Obama gave, would you say that the cities would be a good alternative stream of power to try to enforce certain things, or is it somehow, what's your take on that in this context of what will happen actually?
Let me answer that question first. The first question was, you know, how do we enforce whatever comes out of Paris? You know, to some extent, the president's already done many of the things that we're suggesting we're going to agree to in Paris. He issued an executive order, and the president has a tremendous amount of power as president. He's being challenged by some of the states, but just recently set new standards. There's all new rules coming from Environmental Protection Agency that, in essence, is going to require the coal-powered plants to become much cleaner and to use a much higher percentage of renewables. And he did that by executive order. Now, he's being challenged, but I think, legally, I think he'll win that one. And so many of these things, I served on a task force. He recognized that he wasn't having too much luck with Congress. And so he realized, and then astutely, I think, recognized that cities were making a lot of differences across the United States. So he set up a task force, which I was fortunate enough to serve on, of local leaders, Republicans and Democrats. And our charge was to suggest things to the federal government that they could do without having to pass new laws, change the regulations of the various agencies, provide funding for this, provide funding for that, help cities do what they're already doing, and states as well. And we made 500 some recommendations to the president over our years. This task force was in existence for about a year, and about over half of those have been implemented in the last 3 months. So I think he's doing a lot of things, and I think once this presidential election next November is out of the way too, is that the sides hopefully can come together and recognize this as a problem. And there's a lot of Republicans that are working towards that end as well. We recognize it should be, we don't want to be the party of no to everything either, and hopefully we make some progress there. The second question about industry or business, saying why is government intervening in how our buildings look, and I absolutely believe the people of the city have the right to say what they want that city to be. And they are represented in our system through the government. And if I overreach or the people in the city don't like me making those rules and setting these standards, they can vote somebody else in. But it's a privilege. Businesses don't have a right to just come in and do anything. They have to work with the community they're in, and they need to accede to the wishes of the majority. What type of buildings, how they do business in that particular city. And that's majority rural, and that's our system. I think we did that fairly well in the United States in about the 1920s. If you study the history of our planning departments, and then after the Depression, planning departments started setting fewer standards. They let industry and businesses dictate what would be built. Coming after World War II in particular, they just kind of stepped back and let the private sector do it. And look what we got. The people of the city have a right to say, this is what we want in our city. And for my almost 80% Republican city that supposedly believes in less government regulation, they've agreed with me so far. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a second question. You indicated that your area in Indiana is flat.
Yes.
And I noticed in your plan for your city, you have no public transportation.
No, not yet.
Is that part of your plan?
Well, I did answer that a minute ago, and we're part of the Indianapolis region. And so for the public transportation to work properly, we're part of this larger region. And there's a ballot initiative. There's a vote on our ballot next November to add half a penny of sales tax to pay for a better bus and train system. And so it'll be up to the voters to decide whether they want to pay for that system. Within Carmel, I also said we're about 2 years away from having an intra-city in our more dense areas where it would work. If you have all sprawl, public transit doesn't work very well. And then that can be used as an example not to do public transit in places where it really is needed and would work. So we want to be careful about making certain when we do it that people actually use it. And so we're getting very close to getting the densities that we need in the center part of our city, where we'll be introducing our own intra-city transit in about 2 years. For the regional transit, that will be on the ballot for the voters next November. So, and you're right, I wish I could just take the system that was here and move it to Carmel. It's absolutely wonderful. So I came from the airport on the train, and it's just a wonderful system. Clean, efficient, and seemed to be on time, inexpensive. You're laughing. Not all of it, okay. Well, I had a good experience.
Good evening. You emphasized at the beginning that the population grew a lot in the last
From
years.
20,000 to almost 100,000, 5 times.
What was your plan, initial plan, and what did you do to attract people to come to Carmel?
I tried to say it was the mayor, but that probably wouldn't fly. I think building a beautiful city. We have about 100 corporate headquarters in our city of regional or national significance. And the point I was trying to make in the very beginning, if we want to attract good jobs to our city, we have to be able to say to the companies that young, smart graduate student that you want to hire is willing to come to Carmel, Indiana, as opposed to going to San Francisco or New York or Florida or some beautiful place. They have to be willing to come to our city. And if they're not willing to come, that company isn't going to put those jobs here. They're not going to build in our city. So how we compete for economic development is by beautiful city design. And that has worked for us, and that's why we have grown. And sometimes people say, we don't want to grow that much. I said, no, it's not about whether we're going to grow. Our population is going to go up. We're going to grow. That's a given. The question is it going to be good growth? Is it going to be a high quality growth? Or is it going to be badly planned growth? And so we've tried to say we're going to have really carefully thought out, carefully conceived growth. And I think the fact that we have grown as quickly as we have is a reflection that the people that moved there like what we've done. Yes?
Is living in Carmel still affordable for the people who lived there before through this new concept?
That's a very good question, a very thoughtful question. And the answer is yes. Interestingly enough, there hadn't been any apartments built because we were building suburban, single-family houses everywhere before I became mayor. And we knew from the experience of the communists in Russia that doesn't work really well when you control supply. You know, if you don't have enough supply, the price goes way up because the demand is heavier. And there were a variety of reasons, but people didn't want to build apartments, or at least the officials before didn't. As a result, some very old, not very well kept apartments were selling for, or leasing for maybe double what they are today after inflation. And so we said, no, we want apartments. We want a variety of housing options, what we call condominiums, where you actually own the apartment. Apartments where you pay so much per month to somebody else who owns the building. Townhomes, as opposed to homes right up on the street without yards, as opposed to villas or homes with yards. And so we started to build a variety of housing, and because there was much more supply, the prices actually came down. And we're one of the most affordable places for the same house, say in New York, it might be 4 or 5 times what it is where we are, and the salaries aren't that much different. A little bit different, but not that much. So one of the things that we sell when we talk to people across the United States and other countries is that housing is extremely inexpensive where we are compared to other places in the United States.
I was just wondering, did Carmel also grow in terms of land? Did you incorporate neighboring suburbs during the last decades, or did you have fixed city limits that confines your growth strategy?
the best way to answer that is complicated, but we had services that were provided over about 150 square mile area. The city was providing these services under a contract